So I have done some hiring and team building this year in my business, which yay for that. I have learned so much. I know I still have a lot to learn. And today I want to share 4 of the questions that have been the most important for me when hiring that you ask on, a job application or maybe even later on a job interview. And these are the ones I found myself most caring about what the answer to them were when I was reading applications and deciding who to interview. And these questions are going to be more out of the box, totally not what you think. It's not the whole what's your biggest weakness? What's your biggest strength? I actually always laugh with that question thinking about The Office and Michael Scott. You might remember the episode where he's asked his greatest strengths and he says, why don't I tell you my greatest weaknesses? I work too hard, care too much, and sometimes am too invested in my job. So funny. I love that episode. And this is not those types of super traditional job interview questions, but whether you're hiring someone soon for your first hire, your next hire, even if you already have a team and you just want to get to know the people in your team better, these are going to be great questions for you. So this is a fun one. Let's dive in. Hey guys, it's Elizabeth McCravey, and you're listening to the Breakthrough Brand Podcast. Each week, I'll bring you workshop-style trainings that teach you how to stand out online, design success from the inside out, and create a breakthrough business. It's time to turn viewers into raving fans and design the business and life of your dreams. I'm so excited you're here. Okay, guys, I'm so excited for this episode and to share with you some insightful questions you can ask on job applications for hiring in your business. So to kind of say a quick clarifying thing beforehand, these are questions I asked as part of the literal application process last time I hired. So they were in written form. People were emailing me or, you going through Craigslist or LinkedIn or something to answer them. So they were written. But I also think you could ask these in the next step on a job interview when you're meeting with someone in person or on Zoom or however as well. But these for me were written. And in your business, there are a lot of different types of roles you'll hire for. Sometimes there's specialized work where someone has a very specific skill and you're hiring them to complete the project of that skill. Like hiring a website designer is a great example of that. Other times you're hiring someone to be a part of your team and learn and grow with your company. And in that case, a lot of times what you want to pay the most attention to is those soft skills, like integrity and drive, if they'll mesh well with you and your company and the rest of your team, versus looking at do they know the software you use for your project management? Or do they know this super, super specific skill? All of that is teachable. And I think sometimes we focus too much in a job application on they have to know this software, they have to have this skill, they need to have this degree, whatever it might be. And we forget that those types of skills of knowing a certain software or whatever it is super, super teachable. And again, I'm talking about non-specialized work here. When as an example to kind of give you one, if you were to hire a podcast editor and you don't know how to edit your own podcast, it's better to hire someone who's specialized in podcast editing than to hire someone for soft skills and then teach them how to edit a podcast. But if you're hiring someone for let's say customer support in your business, the soft skills are going to be huge and you can teach them all the skills relating to customer support for whatever your product is. So hope that makes sense, but I just want to clarify that here. I'm kind of talking about in this particular episode a job where you want someone to be a true team member day in and day out in your business. And this episode is going to be not comprehensive at all on all things hiring. I would love to do tons of episodes around hiring because I think it's so interesting. And I have been in the weeds of team building and leadership learning and all of that this year. So I think I have a lot of new information that I'm also in the weeds of learning that I can pass on to you. But we're going to keep this one simple with just hiring interview type questions. So I'm going to go ahead and get into it. I'm going to tell you guys each of the questions, and then I'm going to explain how it was helpful and why you should ask this question on your application. So the first question is, what was the last book you read that had an impact on you and why? That's the question. Last book you read that had an impact on you and why. And if you know me, then you know I love reading. I've talked about that a ton on this podcast. I'm a big reader, and that's probably why I love this question so much. But I think even if you aren't someone who reads a ton, it's still a really valuable question. So when I asked this, I was never looking for someone who like, oh, you have to read a ton of books, or you need to read this really impressive business book to be considered, or you need to have the same taste as me, or anything like that. I was actually looking for a few completely different things. I'm going to explain how it incorporates in this question. Again, it shows why this question is so powerful. So I was looking to learn about the person's personality, their time management skills, and ability to read a question and understand it well enough to like answer it well. So again, earlier this year, it was really actually the end of last year, I guess like more like December of last year. So really close to right now, I was hiring a right-hand person in my business who I wanted to be able to help with customer support, podcast management, marketing, design, so many other things. And this was one of the questions I asked. And I had probably like 80 to 100 applicants. I was looking actually through trying to figure out the exact number. And I think that was around it. And so many people answered this question in a way that made me just be like, nope, out completely. And here's why. So some people answered it saying that they didn't have time to read and then listed out their excuses for why they don't have time to read. And that was their answer. Just that they don't have time to read. And that was an immediate no for me. And here's why. The question says the last book that had an impact on you. So it doesn't say, what is the last book you read, or have you read a book this past month? What was it? That's not what it says. The last book that had an impact on you. So if you don't read now, you could totally take that question and share your favorite book that you read 5 years ago, your favorite childhood book, whatever it is, and say why it was impactful to you. So in a way, it's like an attention to detail question of like, can you figure out how to answer this in a good way? And anyone who came up with an excuse as their answer showed that they might be someone who might be likely to look for excuses when something doesn't make sense, when they don't like something, which is not my type of team member. I want someone who's not going to come immediately to a job application, especially with excuses. But kind of thinking about people who do like actually answer it, some things I kind of looked for there. So when people did just say like, hey, here's what the book is, here's why I liked it, it was really amazing because you got to see what people love and care about, what they're passionate about. Because what we read says a lot about what we like. So I think it's a really interesting question. So it was fun seeing like some people said like they read this mystery book. Here's why they liked it. They read this spiritual book. They read this business book, or like some people even listed 2 or 3 books in different categories and talked about why each one. It was just really interesting. It tells you a lot about a person. And another reason why I love this question is because I believe that readers are good learners. That's just like a fact. You've probably heard that said by other people as well. So I like to have people on my team who care about learning. I want to work with people who like to learn and find reading interesting, even if it's like an audiobook. Again, going back to how the question's not specific, you could choose to answer that however you want. So there's so much nuance to this question, but regardless of if you love reading or not, I think it's really a helpful one and will tell you a lot about a person. And for me, it was like people who said, I actually don't read, I don't have time for it. It was like, nope, not like it's an out on that one. And another reason, just to add one more reason why you need to ask this question, it makes for a really fun icebreaker question if you do end up interviewing this person. So for me, I interviewed a ton of people for this job and ultimately picked one person, and I did all the interviews on Zoom. And this was, again, like last year that I was hiring, but I did the interviews on Zoom. And for some of the people, the book they put was one maybe I had also read, or I was thinking about reading, or I had questions about. So like, that's a great question to start off the interview versus going straight into like all business talk. So the first question, to kind of say it again, the last book you read that had an impact on you and why. Okay, the second question I love. So ask what their Enneagram type is and their Myers-Briggs type, or another type of personality assessment if those are ones that you don't know and don't use. And I would only recommend this question too to kind of clarify if you actually understand the personality test. Otherwise, it's not really helpful. You could find another way to kind of get the same information. But for me, I really love Myers-Briggs. I love the Enneagram. So I actually, on this past time with hiring, I asked about both of these. I asked for both types. And I not only asked for what your type is, but I linked in the application to specific website links with a test for each one that they could take online for free. I asked them to take the test, attach their results to the application when they sent everything over. So I asked them to take it. So it's like, even if you already know you're a type 4 on the Enneagram, I still wanted you to take the test. Interrupting this episode with a suggestion for the small business owners listening. Ever wonder what you should do for healthcare when you and your spouse are both self-employed, so there's no work-provided health insurance to participate in? Well, when my husband Adam joined me in the entrepreneurial job space over 4 years ago, we joined Christian Healthcare Ministries instead of getting traditional health insurance. And it was the best decision for us, especially in these years of growing and raising a family while also running multiple businesses. CHM is a health cost-sharing ministry and is a faith-based alternative to health insurance. We did tons of research before choosing CHM, and if you know me and Adam, you know we are all about doing the math when making big or small financial decisions. And even though it's not insurance, CHM shares 100% of eligible medical bills, which is more than the typical 70 or 80% of medical bills paid for by insurance companies. All sharing is determined by the CHM guidelines, which you can check out before and after joining. And for the mamas and mamas to be listening, you truly cannot find a better healthcare option for maternity care. I had a vaginal delivery and a C-section and birth center care and hospital care between my 2 pregnancies and births, and it was all 100% shared for. And outside of birth, we've had our share of emergency room visits and procedures as a family, and those costs were all shared by members at Christian Healthcare Ministries, leaving us only paying our monthly contribution. CHM is less expensive month to month than insurance, and because there's no network, you can choose your care with whichever providers best fit your family. I seriously just cannot recommend Christian Healthcare Ministries enough. You've got to check them out. Go to elizabethmccravey.com/CHM for more information. Also putting that link in the show notes, elizabethmccravey.com/CHM. Now back to the episode. And here's what's amazing about the request. Going back to the attention to detail thing, I had a lot of people, again, when you're dealing with like 80 to 100 applicants, it's nice to be able to just weed some people out. But I had a lot of people where they might have just skipped the step completely and they weren't paying attention. So maybe they just say, I'm an Enneagram 4, I don't know my Myers-Briggs. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to weed you out because I linked directly for you to take these things and you chose not to. And this is going to sound really funny, this other reason why I like this question, but as someone who is in the online business space, the very virtual world, I was curious to see how people would download and attach their results from the test, because I did not specify attach a screenshot, attach a PDF. I did not say anything like that. I just said send the results information. So, for example, I had some people like get out their phone and take a literal photo of their computer and then upload a giant JPEG to the email with like a really blurry image of the results. I had other people download the web page as a PDF. I had other people screenshot it and send it. I had some people screenshot it and like rename the screenshot as like Enneagram results for their name. And so it was really interesting and like curious to see, because again, when I was hiring for this position, I was knowing that this person's going to be representing my company in emails eventually and online communication in a variety of ways. So that was actually kind of important to me. And again, that's something so teachable, but it was cool to see just like another little tiny thing you can get from some of these questions, seeing how people do that. And if you actually understand typing, of course, this question is so valuable because you can see a lot about their personality, what skill set they have, how that meshes with the job you're wanting them to do, how that would mesh with other people on your team, with yourself, whatever it is. So as an example, if you were hiring someone, like I said a moment ago, to do customer support, then there are some traits you're going to be looking for. You want someone to be really caring for people. You want them to have attention to detail, a lot of patience probably, right? Problem solving skills to be able to like figure out how to answer questions that they might not immediately know the answer to, but to research them and figure it out. Kindness is huge. Enthusiasm. You can kind of get a vibe for them from their personality results. And in general, I think it's helpful to know this stuff too, because it helps you know how to best communicate communicate with team members based on their type. So if you already have a team or, even just one person you work with regularly, but you're like, I don't actually know their Enneagram type, but I this year have gotten really into the Enneagram, it could be a fun thing for you to do of have them take the Enneagram test. You maybe take it again and then share y'all's results with each other and talk about it. And again, if you have another personality test you like better, like I know DISC is one people commonly ask for on job applications, that's great too. For me, Enneagram and Myers-Briggs are my go-tos. And if you're curious, since we're talking about it, I'm an Enneagram 6 and my Myers-Briggs type is INFJ. And again, I love personality typing stuff, so that's a really fun conversation for me. So that's the second one, asking them to take a test and literally send the results information as well as just like answering that question. Third one, this is a really simple question, but I think it's really important. What drew you to this job? So basically you're asking, hey, why are you applying for this? And it's a blunt, kind of like random question, but I think it makes a lot of sense to ask. And again, it's interesting because you'll get data of why people are drawn to your company, your job posting, all of it. And by asking this, you cover bases that your other questions might end up missing. So maybe their reason is that they're interested in a particular skill set you listed on the skills list. And they're like, oh, I really would love to do that. Maybe they looked at your website and blog and they really listen to a podcast episode, they follow you on Instagram and they really love specific things about your company and want to be a part of it. I think that's always really fun when you see people say that of like, hey, they actually really looked at your business and are interested. Maybe they just want any old job and are applying to every listing they find on LinkedIn or Craigslist. In that case, you might find it out here and be able to tell from the way they answered this question. So this is one that, again, you can ask on the application, but it also is one you could ask as a further conversation on the interview. Like, so maybe they said, as an example on the application, that they really love, using Showit. Let's say if you're hiring someone as like an assistant website designer or something like that, you could kind of clarify questions on the interview itself about why they love it, how long they've been using it. It just opens a lot of different doors there that are really fun. Okay, so the last question, you guys, this is a short episode, which is fun. I feel like I'm always so long-winded on podcasts, but I can tell this one's going to be really short. So the last question, what is something unique or interesting about you? Basically, what makes you weird? And this is probably my favorite question of all because you learn so much from this. First of all, again, if you have a ton of applicants, you'll probably have some people opt out of answering this. Like I literally had some people that said like, I'm pretty normal. Nothing comes to mind. It's like, try to answer the question, So for me, this one was like, yeah, they need to have answered it. And literally any answer is a great answer here, but you can find out a lot about a person from this. You can find out about their interests. Like I know I had some people say that they had, been traveling the world for 5 years. There was one person who said that she eats cheese on her Frosted Flakes, which you guys, if you listen back a couple episodes, the one me and Adam did together, talking, or we both kind of interviewed each other. I ate cheese on my Frosted Flakes growing up. It's a long story. You'll have to listen to that interview to hear it. But this girl had a similar story. And that's so interesting, right? It's funny. It was relatable to me. And so you kind of get to see just about like, what do people think about themselves that makes them quirky? I also think another thing that this question, at least for me, brought up was you got to see people's writing skills. And again, if the job relates to writing at all, marketing, things like that, it's kind of fun. And there were plenty of people who, Abby actually being one of them who I ended up hiring, kind of had some humor in their answers, which is really, really fun. So those are the 4 questions. And I also want to just go ahead and share, and I'll recap those questions in a moment, but I want to share a couple more just like random tips. Because again, in prepping for this outline, as I was outlining this episode, I went back and looked through all the applicants I had gotten when I did this job posting, and it gave me a lot of ideas of like, oh, that was really bad. Oh, that was really interesting. So a couple things that I would just recommend from my personal experience and opinion that you look for when you're hiring, when you're reading over applications. So one thing, how they address the email or the letter, whatever, the cover letter, however you want to call it. So it's so funny. I had some people apply for the job and literally start it by saying, "Dear website designer, comma." And I'm like, no. So for me, like at least, seeing about how your job application's set up, for me, it literally said my name in it. It linked to my Instagram handle. It linked to my website. It would take people all of 2 seconds to realize who they were talking to because my business name is my name. So that's definitely more forgivable if your actual name is nowhere, anywhere. You're not linking to your website or anything. But I had some people do the "Dear website designer." I had someone say "To whom it may concern," "Dear sir" or "Madam." And it's like all of that was very generic, and and those were actually a lot of the people who skipped questions and were not actually doing the work. But yeah, just kind of seeing like, how do they address you? Like, did they do the effort of figuring out your name? Another thing I like to look for in reading people's applications is, do they seem like they align with your company's values and mission, all of it? So looking for things like integrity, drive, willingness to learn new things, striving for excellence, things like that, even if those aren't your specific values. But if you have company values written out, which I do, I have a literal document that lists out all the company values and it has a description why each one is there. That's a fun thing to do. So kind of looking at those values and saying, does this person appear, from what I can tell, to align with them? And, sometimes you might not be able to be sure from someone's application. And that's like where, on the interview, you can ask like clarifying questions that help you figure that out. So kind of seeing, do they align with the values? Another thing I like to look for is good grammar. And again, I am not perfect with grammar at all, so I'm never looking for perfection here. But just basically, like, does it look like they proofread it before sending? Like, did they put some effort into this, or is there like blaring grammatical errors everywhere? At this point in our world, with the way there's like spell check on email, and there's things like Grammarly that you can have, added as a Chrome extension, like big typos and big grammatical errors, like really shouldn't be happening that much. So just looking for that. And then this one was kind of rooted throughout all the things I said, but checking like their ability to follow basic directions. And that can be a fast no for you if they didn't. So things like, I said, of actually attaching the results from the personality test, really looking at the way you're asking that book question, like that it didn't say like the book you read last month, it said just any book, and kind of seeing, could they follow those directions? Another thing too, on the directions question, I have not done this personally, but I think it's a great idea. A lot of people will say something like, when you send this email, put the word coffee in the subject line so that we know, you read this. And that's just kind of like a little quick thing to add in, things like that, so that you can make sure people are actually reading it. Another like quick clarifier there, that they can follow basic directions. So that is it, you guys. I'm just going to read over those questions one more time. So the first one, the last book you read that had an impact on you and why. Second, what is their Enneagram type and Myers-Briggs type, linking to all those, letting them take the test and then sending results. 3, what drew you to this job? 4, what is something unique or interesting about you? What makes you weird? So you guys, I hope this is so helpful. If you're hiring someone to be a right-hand person and every day someone to help out in your business, whether this is your first hire or your 5th, whatever, I hope these questions can really help you find the right person. And if you've enjoyed this episode and you want to hear more hiring and team building talk from me, let me know. Send me a message on Instagram and let me know what questions you have. And maybe we could do like a Q&A type episode where I just talk about some of this, expanding on it and more hiring related stuff. Okay, guys. So this was a fun short one. I'll be back next week with another episode. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast, friend. I appreciate you being here. Hey, I want to tell you, if you've enjoyed this episode, then I really want to encourage you to check out my website, where you'll find tons of resources to help you grow a profitable and sustainable business. Over on elizabethmccravey.com, you'll find a lot of great things, some of which I want to tell you about right now. So you'll find free workbooks to help you do things like identify your ideal client, discover what pain points you solve for your customers, or even a guide to help you plan out your Instagram feed. You'll also find my top business tools. Like, yes, I literally list out all the major tools I use in my business on my website. And I have a bunch of special discounts and offer for you guys to snag and try out these products and services. You'll also find my website template shop that helps you DIY your way to a strategic website for your business. These website templates are easy to use. They're built on the Showit platform and they are gorgeously designed. I have a feeling you'll absolutely love them. So to access the tools and free downloads, go to elizabethmccravey.com/tools. And to access the amazing website templates so you can get started with a new website today, go to elizabethmccravey.com/shop. I hope you have so much fun exploring over there. There's so much great stuff for you on my website. And you guys, don't forget, you can subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts so you never miss an episode. And leaving a rating and review for the show on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening, or even just sharing it with a friend is a great way to support this show. Thanks so much for being here. Bye, you guys.